Join me in the audio garden to cultivate our collective wisdom, nurture creativity, and spread love. My name is Martha Senator. Welcome to Listen and Be Heard. Welcome back to the audio garden, my friends. It's good to be here with you. I'm really glad that you came. There are storm clouds on the horizon, and a cold wind seems to be warning me about tomorrow and tomorrows. But right now, at this moment, I feel blessed to be in this peaceful garden looking out. And I'm smiling because even in winter, there's so much to see and feel and appreciate. Like the red-tailed hawks that return again and again to perch on the goat fence, and the crows that come in a crowd to chase them away. Which reminds me that we too are a part of nature, and whether we feel peace or despair, everything will change. Spring will come. And today is still today. And today we welcome Jan Smith, a writer and the executive director of the Society of the Muse of the Southwest in Taos, New Mexico. Later in the hour, we will listen to an archival recording of author and poet Barbara Tran, reading from Watermark, a landmark anthology of Vietnamese American writing. We persist in resisting book banning, and of course, we're thinking, talking, listening, working toward climate resilience, community resilience, regional self-reliance, and the art of loving each other. We'll get started with some poetry. Back in the day when Listen and Be Heard was an open mic and a poetry cafe in Vallejo, California, Q.R. Hand Jr. showed up every week to listen very attentively to each and every poet. And he often spoke to them, too, about their poems and offered encouragement, advice. And he told me many times how happy he was to have an open mic that he could walk to from his house. He was also part of a group of poets and musicians. They called themselves Word Wind Chorus. And they produced a CD together that came out back in 2000. Let's listen to Q.R. Hand Jr. reciting, "Numberless are the sands of the seashore," from the CD, We Are of the Saying.
Numberless are the sands on the seashore. Us folks are the peoples who look towards the sea. Vision and memory, past, perfect futures, are strewn about our musics like seaweeds on the shores. Our eyes, hearts affired, dancing on, limbs aghast and bedazzled, caressing these sands, hand-clapping spirits. Our souls are numberless. Like bands of the spectra, our hues are numberless. Jump back, brothers, see our sisters prancing on the sea, their curves and spheres rounding off the edges of the sands, making sheets of molten glisten we are evocations of. This sweet liquid strumming on these vibrant far reaches on our faithful shore. This ritual clamor, we are on this shore spelling out the seasons of reason. Numberless beings grow gills, sprout wings, drunken on the bottom of pink coral reef, then leap the sea, sailing easy to afar, to a star we are stoned reflections of. To view from there these sands who do not know they are us, not these sands, our foundations on these wheels of things, rolling shore, surf-washed, waves yearn to roll in murmurs on. These grits are relentless, too, in change in forms, numberless, pastel and pale yellows mixed by the sea, the wind, the sun, our constant companions on this sphere, on this beachhead here, on our minds. And communal heart molds sands into cities and ports to welcome from the sea more ancestors to play on this shore notes of universal hide. Seek. Time here is numberless. We've known not its name. We are the growth here. We are the trees. We are the creatures here, so it is said, on which cosmic bet no wages subsist. Numberless are the names of this life on these sands, on the dream washed up on these shores us folks are on, the peoples who look towards the sea. Looking towards the sea, our songs are the bread of the shore, our spirits our spawn. On these quick sands we name ourselves numberless.
This is the Listen and Be Heard hour for readers and writers. We've been listening to the late, great poet Q.R. Hand Jr. here in the audio garden. Jan Smith has joined me in the greenhouse because it's cold out there, folks. And I don't want her to get frostbite, although I do know she's used to winter up there in the mountains of New Mexico. And so are the visitors to SOMOS, a bookstore and writer's haven in Taos. I'm so happy to welcome Jan Smith to the audio garden today. We're welcome her. She's the executive director of SOMOS in Taos, New Mexico. SOMOS is a bookstore and much more. I initially thought that it was Somos was like the Spanish word, we are, or we. And, but that's not actually what Somos stands for. It's the Society of the Muse of the Southwest. So maybe we could start there, and welcome.
Thank you, Martha. Thanks for inviting me to speak with you today. Yeah, Somos. A lot of people make that same mistake because Taos actually has quite a large Hispanic community. But the founders of Somos wanted something that could be an acronym for the Society of the Muse of the Southwest. So that's how they put that together.
Has it somehow had a marriage with that reference to Somos? Like, have you embraced the sort of
I think
double
the
meaning?
marriage is that we really try very hard to offer diverse programming with diverse authors and poets to be as inclusive of our tricultural area. I mean, there are more than three cultures, but the predominant cultures are Native American, Hispanic, and rather than white, here we're called Anglos.
Yes, and Taos is an extremely interesting location for many reasons. One of them being the very strong native cultural presence that's there. But it's remote, it's in the mountains, it's not easy to get to. That's what I recall as a child visiting Taos, which was back in the 70s. And to my childish eyes, it didn't seem that there was a whole lot there in Taos at the time. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the demographics that you're serving as a bookstore in that community.
Yes, the town of Taos, that's actually within the borders of Taos, is 5,000 people. I think the latest statistics that I read said it's about 40% Hispanic, 35 to 40% Hispanic, 10% Native, and the rest Anglos. Now, the wider Taos community is more like 15,000 because there's a lot of small towns that are sort of offshoot. And I did not know about Taos before I came here. Uh, that's a story for another day. Um, but one of the things I quickly learned was that this tends to be a very rich area, not only for the diversity of cultures and perspectives, but for the diversity of art, music, literary events, sculpture, any form of the creative arts. Um, Taos is one of those areas that seems to really draw creatives. And there's a saying that that talks about the fact that the mountain either won't let you go or kicks you out. And I've been here 16 years now, so I guess I'm staying, or at least so far.
Well, no, I wanted to talk with you today partly because, um, partly because KCEI Radio there in Taos has been playing this show on the station. And so
Oh,
I wanted to reach out and make this show a little more local for the people who are listening to us in Taos, who we appreciate, our listeners all over the country. And your bookstore seems to serve as a sort of hub for writers. It's more than just a place to come and buy books. And it was recommended to me by Veronica Golos, who's a local writer there. Um, you're a writer as well, so maybe you could give us a little bit of that story. Tell us how you came to the bookstore and how the bookstore serves writers in general.
well, first of all, I want to acknowledge that KCEI is right next door to Somos.
Oh, I did
And
not
they've,
know that.
yep, we're right on the same street. We're actual, there to our left. They're our very next neighbor. And I've spent a lot of time over there with Robin Collier and Mike Tilley, who run the show. Um, in terms of the bookstore and a haven for writers, you're absolutely right. We have sort of dual purposes running. One is that someone a long time ago, not me, came up with the brainchild of accepting donations of used books in good resellable condition. And when I first started at Somos in 2009, um, the bookshop part of it used to be only open one Saturday a month. Since then, we're now open 5 days a week, and we have over 10,000 volumes of books that are managed by our volunteer bookshop manager, Danielle Freeman, and her crew of volunteers. And what they do is they clean the books, they sort them, and shelve them in different sections throughout the store. And if I can brag for just a moment, a lot of folks who come from far away, who travel to Taos from Colorado, Texas, Arizona, have often made the comment that it's one of the best bookstores they've ever been to because we get quite a selection. It's a very literate community in Taos, and so we often get a lot of really great books. So that's one aspect of our operation, and the money that the books sell for between $1 to $3, occasionally more than that if it's a book that's really valuable, but primarily $3 a book, whether it's hardback or paperback. And that definitely helps support our organization on a yearly basis. The second part of our programming, which is what started first, Somos was founded in 1983, was to offer literary programs to the public. And what those include are readings by local, regional, and national poets and authors. They include workshops related to the craft of writing. They include an annual storytelling festival in the fall, uh, the Taos Poet Laureate program, um, Prose Month, which is a celebration of prose writers, in for the month of November, which coincides with National Novel Writing Month. And then, of course, Poetry Month, the month of April, for coinciding with National Poetry Month. And and then in the summer, we have the 3-day Taos Writers Conference, which now we're heading into the 9th year.
This is the Listen and Be Heard Hour for readers and writers. I'm Martha Senator, your guide in the audio garden, staying warm in the greenhouse and speaking with Jan Smith, director of SOMOS in Taos, New Mexico. Tell me a little about the Taos Writers Conference. Is that do you just feature writers, or is that meant as also a workshop for writers
It's
to
very
attend?
much workshop oriented. I usually I recruit a keynote speaker as sort of a big name. We've had people like, well, this year we're going to have Nick Flynn, who's a very well known poet and prose writer and memoirist. We've had Anthony Mara, we've had Joy Harjo. And there's a long list of different people over the 9 years that we've had.
And so, what would a prospective writer thinking about attending the Taos Writers Conference, what could they hope to get out of that?
Each session, Friday is all day long, and Saturday and Sunday, they're multiple 3-hour sessions, are geared towards either poetry writers, fiction writers, memoirists, so forth. And it's all on craft. So there's a lot of support for things like writing the persona poem or developing your characters. So they are specifically themed to, they're really focused not on critique, but they're focused on generative writing and also offering valuable information from not only published authors, but seasoned teachers. That's my 2 criteria when I recruit faculty for the writers conference. Is
How long a period of time does the conference last?
it's over the course of 3 days.
And do you have people travel from everywhere? Or does it tend to be more regional? And how quickly does it fill up? If somebody wanted to go, how soon should they plan ahead?
Yes, they should, especially if they're thinking that they're going to be traveling, because hotels fill up and so forth. Um, the conference, unlike some other conferences, does not include lodging or meals. We have lots of snacks and receptions, but people make their own lodging and transportation plans. Usually, by the very beginning of March, our website is finished so that people get a first view of who's teaching, what they're teaching, who the keynote is, etc. And there, of course, there's a lot of early birds who sign up right away. We are probably one of the least expensive writing conferences. Maybe partly is because we don't offer the lodging and the meals, but in surveying a lot of other conferences that I've gone to many over the years, we're really reasonable. And the other thing is that since COVID, well, of course, in 2020, we shifted and had the entire conference online because we had to. But the good news about that is that now, ever since then, even since we've been able to meet in person again, I make sure that 3 of the workshops in the 3 hours slot, which there are 3 of, are online. No, I mean 3 are in person and 2 are online, which has really boosted the diversity of our attendees because they don't have the travel expenses and they can just zoom in from home. And I think, a lot of people by necessity became familiar with using Zoom and spending part of their working day on Zoom. So that's a big advantage. The keynote is always live, but each period of time offers even on Friday, which is what we call we call them Friday intensives. They're all day long. We even offer 2 of them to be online as well. So I would say it appeals to the kind of writer that could be at any level of writing, a beginner, more of an intermediate or advanced, because the faculty are well published and they're also very experienced in teaching. So even though you may be an advanced poet, for example, maybe you haven't spent much time writing haiku, and that's just something that you've always wanted to really learn more about. That would be something that would be available to you. And we keep the conference small. In reference to your other question about filling up, my perfect number is between 75 to 90. I don't want to go over 90 people. And we usually end up with about 80, 82 ish, because we have probably about, I would say, between 40 to 50% are from the state of New Mexico. And the other 50% are from neighboring states or as far away as California, New York, Minnesota, Missouri.
Uh huh.
And that's only increased since we're offering the online version.
So that seems like a great resource for any writer interested in working on their craft in a supportive environment. This is probably a good time to ask you how said writer might get in touch with you and find out more about that.
Sure. We have a very simple website, www.somos, SOMOS, Taos, TAOS.org. And right now, the only thing that's on the website about the conference are the dates, which are July 25th through the 27th. And there's information about the keynote. And I do already have the featured poet for next year, for 2026. If I could, I have his book actually. The name of his debut poetry book is called 2000 Blacks. He is the winner of the Cave Canem Poetry Prize, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to pronounce his last name. He's Nigerian. He's currently living in the United States. Abajola Tolazi. I read about him in Poets and Writers. He was he was reviewed there after winning the prize, and so I reached out to him and asked him if he would consider coming to Taos, New Mexico, in April of 2026, which he has agreed to do. So I'm very excited about that as well.
Would you like to take a few minutes to speak about who you'll be featuring this year, as well as the Young Writers program that you have?
Oh, yes, I forgot to mention the Young Writers Program. So, the first major person that we're going to be focusing on is a poet by the name of Rachel Coventry. She is going to be the featured poet for Poetry Month this year. She is from Galway, Ireland. So she's flying over the pond, as they say. And she's published 3 different collections of poetry. So I'm very excited to have her come. Then Nick Flynn will be here this summer. Right now, we're still working on our keynote, who will be the storytelling festival highlight. And oh gosh, we have had many Hispanic keynote speakers, as well as Anglos, as well as Lucy Tapajonzo is a native New Mexican and was the poet laureate of the Navajo Nation. She was a keynote speaker one year. Let's see. Oh, you mentioned the Young Writers Program. The Young Writers
Yes.
Program is open and free, completely free, for all youth ages 10 through 19. We have a Young Writers Program curator, who this year her name is Susan Mahalik, and she is responsible for delivering all 3 aspects of the program. One is finding individual mentors for young writers who are willing to work and tutor and mentor them. The other is she runs a weekly young writers writing group at one of the schools in town. And then the third aspect is she invites accomplished writers and poets to come into the classroom and teach either one or a series of workshops. Usually, she collaborates with an English teacher in the high school, the middle school, and some of our charter schools. We try to cover a lot of the different schools, and that runs the entire academic year from August through the end of May.
Well, thank you for telling us more about all the wonderful things that are going on at SOMOS Bookstore. You're a writer. How do you manage all this and feel like a writer as well? It must be a challenge.
It, you're absolutely right, Martha. It is a challenge. I've often sort of joke about the fact that I'm married to my job because it's been my lifelong dream to work in this kind of atmosphere. And I have my master's in fine arts in creative writing from Goddard College. In fact, that's how I got to Taos, was that I really wanted to find a place that could teach me how to write creatively, because I had done a lot of clinical writing in my earlier careers, but not much creative writing. So I haven't published a lot at this point, but I have published quite a few poems and short stories, and won some prizes. And I have a memoir that's still in a draft form that needs a lot of work, and also a novel that I work on. And quite frankly, it's hard to discipline myself to find the time to do the writing.
Do
Usually,
you have a time of day? Do you have a
I
time of
do.
day that
I
you try to
do.
write?
And I'm not a daily writer, never have been. I'm more of a binge writer where I will take, 3 or 4 hours and just work and work and work and work. Actually, it comes down to the best day for me and time is Sunday morning with a cup of coffee and no plans until at least noon. So I sort of safeguard that as much as I can.
We all have to safeguard something in order to be
Yes.
able to get that writing done. And I appreciate you sharing that part of your journey with us. People can visit you, find out more at somostaos.org. I want to thank you so much for joining us here. This is the Listen and Be Heard Hour for readers and writers. It's an hour dedicated to readers and writers. It's entirely non-commercial and available for free on your community radio station and as a podcast at listenandbeheard.net or your favorite podcasting service. We post unedited videos that Tony Robles and I, Martha Senator, have had the honor to record with authors and others, and they are also available at listenandbeheard.net. Or if you just like videos, you could go to our YouTube channel. I want to thank everybody who listens, and most especially listeners from WPVM in Asheville, North Carolina, and KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, and KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas, and KHOI in Ames, Iowa. I'm going to venture now into the cold to walk Jan Smith to the garden gate. I want to thank her once again for joining us here in the audio garden. Coming up, a few words from Dan Sinekin, author of Big Fiction, talking about banning books. And I'll be digging up some more roots to share a reading from Barbara Tran. I'll meet you on the other side of the bridge in about a minute.
I'm Tony Robles, co-host of Listen and Be Heard, and this is WLBH.org in the Carolinas. Listen and Be Heard Radio. This is WLBH.org in the Carolinas. Listen and Be Heard Radio.
Once it's heard, it can't be unheard. Once it's published, it's not going to be unpublished. Once you read the poem, you can't unread it. No matter how an individual may try to push it to the side, forget about it, it's still in there. And it's the words, the meaning, the feelings behind it are taking root in their psyche, and they can't get rid of it.
This book is gay by Juno Dawson.
With the election of Donald Trump, we are more likely to see more book bans in the coming years. I think it's contemptible. I think people who are banning books are demonstrating that they're afraid. They're afraid of the free circulation of ideas. And every time they ban a book, I hope that we raise the name of that book so that it sells more copies than it ever would have had it not been banned in the first place.
The voice of Dan Sinekin here in the audio garden. I'm still digesting his book Big Fiction, which sheds a lot of light on the publishing industry as it is today. And you can find my interview with him in the archives of the Listen and Be Heard Hour for readers and writers. Last week, we listened to Monique Trong reading from Watermark, a landmark anthology of Vietnamese American poetry and prose that was published in 1998, and a 25th anniversary publication of that anthology was done by Texas Tech University Press in 2023. Today we're going to listen to Monique's co-editor of that book, Barbara Tran, reading live from the WBAI studios on 8th Avenue at the time. And of course, I looked her up to see what she's up to today. I'm really excited to read Precedented Parroting, which is on my to-be-read pile right now. But today, we're going to warm ourselves with some root tea. This is Barbara Tran reading from her story Rosary in the anthology Watermark.
From Rosary. Do I begin at the here and now, or does the story start with the first time my mother took the wheel, the first woman to drive in a country where men are afraid to walk? My mother's story begins when the steam rises. It ends when it's ready. Taste it. Does it need more salt? Heat. Today at 67, she stands at the stove at work. The heat overcomes her. She thinks she is standing at the shore. The steam is like a warm breeze being carried out to sea. My mother hears the seagulls circling above. She feels the sun on her skin and admires the reflection on all the shining fish bodies. Her father's men have been collecting the nets for days now, laying the fish out for fermenting. The gull with the pure white underside swoops toward the fish farthest away, lands on an overturned boat, its sides beaten and worn, its bottom sunburned like a toddler's face after her first day of work in the rice fields. Beside the boat, a palm hut where the fishermen hang their shirts and where their wives change when it's time for a break from the scooping and jarring, when their black pants become hot as the sand itself. And then the laughter starts, and the women's bodies uncurl from their stooped positions, their pointed hats falling back, the men treading anxiously in the water as they imagine a ribbon pulling gently at each soft chin. Bait. Through the eye, my grandfather threads the rusty hook, forces it back through the body of the fish. The tail curves around as if frozen mid-leap. The seagulls never leave. The smell of fish always in the air. Today, the old man will give them nothing. It is his daughter he is thinking of. My mother is 14 and beginning to turn heads. Her father thinks she will like the seagull with the pure white underside. He watches the birds, daring one another to come closer. He watches the younger ones in their confusion, the swoop and retreat. He has not fed them for days. Minutes go by, and he thinks the boats will come in soon, scattering the gulls. The year of the snake is only days away. He would buy his daughter a dove, but she likes the wind. With a quick swoop, a gull grabs the fish in its beak. The old man wraps the line around his roughened hands, braces himself for the tug as the line grows more taut. And suddenly, the bird jerks in the sky, wings extended as if it's been shot. Cage. Easter lilies spill from her thin arms, the flowers and her gloves equally as spotless. This is how it began. My mother would never forget the seagull with the hook through its bill. Often she would recall how wrong the imagination could go. All she had been thinking about was the pure white of its underside, not the high-pitched cry of a child being separated from all it knows. The best part was seeing it finally take to its wings again. It was still in the cage that her father had built, but she could pretend it had its freedom. It could fly higher than she could reach. Downpour. She knew it was coming by the way the glass jars shook in the darkness, the occasional flash of lightning crawling the walls like quick lizards. A rain so heavy things would be hammered into the earth. She thought of all the glass jars resting on their shelves, all the hours the men spent blowing these cylinders for the nukmam they made from the anchovies they caught, and then the few drinking glasses they made for themselves on the side when her father wasn't watching. After the rain, the broken pieces would once again have to be melted down and mixed together, and here her father lay in bed, smoking away the profits. With each breath in, the fishing boats moved farther and farther away. With each breath out, more jars needed to be made, sold. Her father couldn't even hear the thunder, the lightning, warm flashes on his lids, like the sun when he was trying to nap in the afternoon. He thought the glass blowers earned him a puff on his pipe, with each puff on theirs. He should reap the rewards of being an old man, of owning his own fishery. But with each breath, his daughter grows more impossibly beautiful. He knows he will not be able to keep her long. Faith. For years, my grandfather thought he could keep my mother by his side. She seemed content with her prayers and fasting, but he didn't know about the couple that sat before her at Mass that Sunday morning. She had noticed them, the man sitting next to the woman as if she were any other. But then the stolen glances, the passing of a prayer book, the spreading of goosebumps from the neck down the arms, the woman crossing herself. The first time my father saw my mother, she was driving the barren countryside of Byingho. How vain, he thought to himself, wearing Easter lilies in her hair. What he didn't know was that they actually were Easter lilies. She was on her way to Mass. She wore them year-round to remind herself that Jesus was always risen if you kept him alive in your life. Proof. They were married before her father knew it, her father smoking opium in the bright sun. All he could remember was the white jacket, the black tie, the boat rocking, the boys reaching, dragging the net full of fish, the fish drying in the sun, the seagulls swarming like men honing in on the scent, the slow peeling of an orange, smoke coming from his pipe, the juice squirting, the spewing out of pits, and then she was packing. Prayer. My grandfather had always had 3 women in the kitchen, someone continuously preparing something, fresh bread, hot banana pudding, sweet rice with coconut. And now his daughter was leaving, and the women were selecting china for her to take. He wondered how this happened. She was the last of his daughters, and he had spoiled her, hoping to keep her for himself. For years, he spent his days, from the moment he woke until the sun began its slow dive into the water, submerged, working the fishing nets, his skin puckered like a mango left in the sun too long. And here, his daughter would still need to watch the gills heave up and down, the gasping at the small mouth. Still, she'd need to chop the head off, blood running down the sides of the cutting board, her hands covered with scales. For years, he tried to keep her hands from coming in contact with anything but the food she ate and the money she counted. Now they would be roasted daily over a fire. He wondered how crowded her new home would be. how long she would have to live with her in-laws, how such a small child would bear a child. He knew she would find it difficult to breathe in the smog-filled streets of Saigon. He closed the trunk for her, knelt down beside her, pressed a bar of gold into her palm. He wanted her to write as often as possible. She nodded. She wanted to stay, to hold her father's hand, to watch the fishing boats come in, to listen to the seagulls like hungry beggars outside. Hope. It all began with her driving the barren country roads, barren because the men were too fearful to walk them. Knife blade to the neck, my mother still refused to hand over the pearls her father gave her for her first Christmas as a teen, as a target for unmarried men. Really what she hoped they wouldn't find was the pearl rosary her mother left behind. She felt the blade bite deeper into her neck, the same place her husband would often bite her the first year they were married. The last year she would think of love as something shared between two people. Hunger. In Saigon, a daughter on each hip, she began to wonder where the rice was going. Leaving one child home, sucking her thumb, the other holding her empty belly, my mother hailed a taxi. In front of the cathedral, the pink nails in the car ahead crept across the man's neck, and she recognized both. This was, after all, the man who woke her body. Before him, she knew only the ache of chopping and carrying, of balancing heavy loads. Now there was a different kind of pull, like the sea, and after it, a different kind of heavy load filling her belly. Of course, she followed him. Balance. On the way back home from the market each day, the pole teeters across her back, a pot on either side. The one on the right emptied of its pho, the one on the left full of dirty bowls and the leftover dishwater she was too impatient to drain. Gung skips ahead, his short hair bouncing with each step. She quickens and grabs her youngest son's ear, twisting it, not because he is getting too far ahead or because he is daydreaming, but because she can't. Her husband gone with the two oldest children, my mother still has 4. He lives in a duplex in Manhattan. She sells pho for 10 cents a bowl and needs someone to hold. Gung is getting too old with his slingshots and firecrackers, his patched eye from thut. Each day she drags my grandmother's bed a little closer to hers, brings a mirror along with dinner to her mother's bedside. Epilogue. Brushstroke number 49, and her hair shines like a black cat's. She can think of nothing but the days when she wore her hair above her shoulders, moved her hips like a boy, and still the men couldn't help but look. Now there are so many things to fit into the frying pan. The daughter with the red lingerie rolled inside her dirty school uniform, the son with the twisted jaw and the constant longing for a cold beer, the husband she chased in taxicabs, holding her extended belly, only to finally say, "Please, take me home." At 17, my mother counted her Hail Marys on the little white beads of her rosary. Now she counts them off on the heads of her 7 children, counting herself as 8 and her husband as 1 and 10.
We've been listening to Barbara Tran, reading from her story Rosary, published in part in Watermark, an anthology of Vietnamese American poetry and prose, now in its 25th anniversary edition from Texas Tech University Press. Barbara Tran and Monique Trong are among the co-editors of Watermark and also authors of new books. Barbara Tran's is poetry called Precedented Parroting from Palimpsest Press, and Monique Trong's is a children's book called My Zhao Yai from Simon & Schuster. And I'm looking forward to a party in the Audio Garden when we all reunite sometime in 2025 to talk about both books and the Landmark Anthology.
Everyone, And everyone should be heard. It's an important facet of being human.
Find the artists you love. Take to the street. Spread the news so they can listen and be heard.
Winter. Come close to me, O companion of my full life. Come close to me, and let not winter's touch enter between us. Sit by me before the hearth, for fire is the only fruit of winter. Speak to me of the glory of your heart, for that is greater than the shrieking elements beyond our door. Bind the door and seal the transoms, for the angry countenance of the heaven depresses my spirit, and the face of our snow-laden fields makes my soul cry. Feed the lamp with oil, and let it not dim, and place it by you, so I can read with tears what your life with me has written upon your face. Bring autumn's wine. Let us drink and sing the song of remembrance to spring's carefree sowing, and summer's watchful tending, and autumn's reward in harvest. Come close to me, O beloved of my soul. The fire is cooling and fleeing under the ashes. Embrace me, for I fear loneliness. The lamp is dim, and the wine which we pressed is closing our eyes. Let us look upon each other before they are shut. Find me with your arms, and embrace me. Let slumber then embrace our souls as one. Kiss me, my beloved, for winter has stolen all but our moving lips. You are close by me, my forever. How deep and wide will be the ocean of slumber, and how recent was the dawn. That was a poem. I pulled it from my bookshelf. It was part of a poem, actually. The part called Winter. And it's from a poem called The Life of Love, from the book Tears and Laughter by Kahlil Gibran. And it's published, it was published in a series. Let me see. I'm going to the title page here. A division of Philosophical Library in New York. It was called the Wisdom Library. And the copyright is with the Philosophical Library, Inc. And that was copyrighted in 1949. Next week on the Listen and Be Heard Hour for Readers and Writers, my co-host, Tony Robles, will be waiting at the Garden Gate to greet a very special guest, an elder with much wisdom to share with us, an Olympic champion, and a children's book author, Billy Mills. Let's get a little bit of that conversation right now.
It was almost like that. I'm like, well, God, where did that come from? That energy. It was almost like you had just started the race fresh and not the final lap. I mean, Can you kind of take us to that? I mean, that's just incredible.
One of the most challenging things I had to do was to truly say to myself, I want to heal a broken soul. I want to pursue the Olympic Games, and I'm willing to do the training, to make the sacrifices, to totally commit to the pursuit of trying to win a gold medal at the Olympic Games, to heal a broken soul. Fortunately, Donna Janelle Bowman, she brought so much to me in creating the book. She could take a thought I would share and she could put it into writing in a manner I felt it was being written by an elder, a Lakota elder, speaking with the kind of the storytelling concept of the Lakota people. And she was able to do that. And I felt her bringing words to life. And I could do it, but not in the manner she did it. She truly, truly brought the life that you're expressing to the book. The way I look at the young people today, my tribe, Sitting Bull, one of our great leaders, when he surrendered, he simply said, let's take the best of both worlds and build a new world for our children. Those words and those footprints immediately became misleading. Treaty signed, treaties broken, boarding school trauma, the genocide, the doctrine of discovery. So our elders said it would take 7 generations for our young people facing this devastating trauma to heal. That, with my tribe, that 7th generation is in the classroom today. So I wanted to take the virtues and the values. They're the group that can take the virtues and the values, culture, tradition, spirituality, along with their dream and along with the person sitting in the chair next to them, into the horizon of America's future to choreograph and mature this incredible democratic experiment.
Thank you for walking along with me this past hour. It's always my pleasure to be your guide here in the Audio Garden. Our featured poetry today was Numberless Are the Sands of the Seashore by Q.R. Hand Jr. Our featured interview was with Jan Smith, writer and director of SOMOS in Taos, New Mexico. We also featured an archival reading by Barbara Tran from Watermark, an anthology of Vietnamese American literature published by Texas Tech University Press. Next week, Tony Robles will welcome Billy Mills to the Audio Garden. And we will serve some more roots, this time from California, a former San Francisco poet laureate, Alejandro Murguia. I'm your host, Martha Senator. My co-host is Tony Robles. Associate producer, DJ Jeannie Hopper. Editing by Jeremiah Cothran. Music, editing, and mastering by J. Rodriguez Sierra. The band book theme is by DJ Jeannie Hopper with the voice and words of Yvette Murray. Living It is from the CD of the same name by yours truly. Thanks as always to Davine Dial at WPVM Radio in Asheville, North Carolina for introducing Listen and Be Heard to the broadcast airwaves, and to community radio stations across the country for bringing the Audio Garden to your communities. And to our own Listen and Be Heard network, host of WLBH.org, your 24/7 streaming radio station for all things literary. please visit us at listenandbeheard.net. You can sign up for our email newsletter and leave some thoughts. Listen and be heard. I want to thank you for listening and giving me the opportunity to be heard. Living it, giving it, having it, taking it, moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is sewing a coat, investing each stitch with magic, creating a unique design, putting it on and wearing it the rest of your life. Living it is knowing that what you see, what you hear is tangible. It's being a rock in the river and being the river too. It's hearing, you'll never be able to do that. Living it is knowing you will do it. It's speaking the unspoken. It's thinking the unthinkable. It's doing the unexpected. It's quitting before you get fired. Living it is giving it is having it is taking it is moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is loving a man you're not supposed to love. It's giving way to emotions, creating commotions, calling attention to yourself. And I got that. Living it is learning from someone who can actually show you. It's cleaning your teacher's house or helping her to find one. It's never ever saying J-O-B. Living it is a one-way ticket and no solid plans. It's smoking a J in a smoke cafe in Amsterdam. It's saying the day is pretty in a strange new city. Living it is giving it is having it is taking it is moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it.